Well, I managed to pick up some more Hammond collection figures. I managed to get the Anky, the Geosternbergia, and the JP3 female Velociraptor. Um, all from Amazon listings, which is phenomenal. Let's go through the Anky today. Boom. Whoa. It's got the 30th anniversary label on it. I don't remember if we saw that when it was very first revealed, because this figure's been waiting in the wings for so goddamn long. And then yeah, JP3 logos, because it's the JP3 Anky, the vastly superior rendition of the Ankylosaurus in the franchise. Although the Anky is just horrendously inaccurate in the Jurassic franchise in general. A very common problem with Ankylosaurids in media. Well, let's get this thing open. So, standard, Hammond collection packaging stuff. Slides out. It's entombed in plastic. I opened it right before the video, just the packaging, but it hasn't been removed yet. This is interesting. It's got a little cross beam thing here taped in place. That's a new one. Something maybe to secure the body from being smushed. Okay. This is going to be a more elaborate opening process. Yeah, that's just a taped on weird little plastic filler. We'll just throw it across the room. All right. Let's get the binds cut here so we can take a closer look at this guy. Ankylosaurids in the toy lines were like really underrepresented for the longest time. So it's really nice to see them do a figure like this, I think. I'm like very excited for this one. I have the Anky figure they did very early on. I think this was the first Anky figure they ever did for the toy lines. Mattel, that is. Maybe the second. I don't remember for sure. But yeah, this figure was already pretty damn good. I think it was one of the better early figures. All right, we got the tail, multi-segmented. That is a nice tail, actually. So this is different than a lot of the other Hammond collection figures in that it's not wire, it's just segmented. But with the armoring, that is really cool. I really like that. That's a really good tail design for an Ankylosaurid. I'm going to have more to say about this tail, spoilers, later, too. While I really like the design of it toy-wise, boy, does it have some other issues that we'll get to. It's actually going to harken back to something that's come up, I think, a few times now on some other figures. Also, this guy is, like, absolutely tied down in this packaging. Holy smokes. Like, not like that there's a lot of ties, but that the ties that are binding it are tight. He is not allowed to move during transit. Yeah, just 2 ties to remove the main body of the figure. But they were just very, very tight. All right. Well, there's our dude. Completely unpainted toenails on this guy. Now that's a bit disappointing. All the feet are completely unpainted. True of the basic figure. At a glance behind me, it looks like it was true of the Triceratops too. So probably not surprising that this one would also be unpainted on the feet, but disappointing nonetheless. The overall paint job otherwise, we've got spikes that are a distinct color from the body color. We've got the red on the eye. We've got the brown kind of shell. Red inside the mouth. That is a very wide, flat, and square head. The texturing on top of the head looks pretty nice. That kind of armored texture. It looks like we got neck movement on a ball joint, and then the head, it looks like is just a side-to-side swivel, which is sufficient for this sort of thing. I like that the jaw here looks to me like it blends in pretty well, like size-wise. Some of the jaws on the Hammond collection figures look, I think, a little awkward because of just the size of them. Kind of a trade-off for articulation. I would, in some cases, prefer no jaw articulation if it affects the profile of the figure negatively, or what feels negative to me. So there it is with the tail attached. Nice, easy, standard stuff. Just plug it in. Quality control. Honestly, I'm going to say at a glance, this might be one of the best conditioned figures we've gotten, which I was a little nervous about ordering a figure from online because I can't do any vetting of it initially. And I'm at the mercy of whatever they ship me, you know? But I don't see any significant damage on this guy or any paint misapplications at all. Like, the worst thing I can see is there's like a tiny speck of like the tiniest nick in the plastic or a little bit of stray paint like over one of these armor nodes, and it's like so insignificant. There's an interesting thing with the paint decal, especially on the top here. You can see it a lot on the head, which I've mentioned before. It actually looks kind of like dirty, like there's dirt in the cracks of the armor, which is a really nice look, I think. Actually, it gives it like a realistic vibe of an animal that's been rolling in the dirt a bit. Which is quite neat. And you can see that it actually extends down the body too. I don't know much about painting of figures or painting in general, but I have watched a few videos of people doing customs, and so maybe this is some sort of like wash or something over it that fills in the cracks that gives it that vibe. Or maybe it's just actually dirty from the factory. Who knows? Yeah, no, this looks like a nice figure. Let's compare it to the other one. So, one thing to note, the head shape is pretty different. The Hammond collection figure is a lot flatter than the other one, which has more of a rounded profile. Can't say much about accuracy off the top of my head regarding that. Body length, the Hammond collection one's a good deal larger. The tail club is the same design, which we'll get to. Why that's a problem. And then the height, standing, yeah, basically the Hammond collection one's kind of scaled up in every way it can be. Looks like he might be a little bit rounder in the shell, which shouldn't be a shell. Ankylosaurs don't have shells; they just have, you know, armored bones embedded in their skin. They're not turtles, but yeah, no, this looks like a very nice figure. It actually looks like even the little spikes on the tail here on the side are painted. They're like a slightly different brown than the underside of the tail, which is really surprising to me that they'd bother with that. Unless that's kind of that like wash or something that does that. I don't know. Interesting. Well, it looks nice. Joints. Some stiffness. Rear leg's a little loose, relatively speaking, but then the foot doesn't move at all, basically. It does move, there's a joint, but it's just very stiff. But there's enough mobility here, of course, to get this pose. It's not bad. Not that there's that many poses you can do for a quadrupedal animal that's just kind of sitting around doing its thing, but you know, it'll work. All right, let's talk accuracy here. So I've got a few reference materials, and I already know a big problem with this figure. We'll get to that. First off, we've got a nice JP3 shot here of the Anky, the way it appears in the film. You can see the general color palette of the figure matches what we see there, more or less. The bottom horn here on the head, it's like a jugal horn, I guess. Unpainted on the figure, should be black. The red on the face, I think, should be more widespread. It looks to me like that this should basically come all the way down to the level of the mouth at least, and it's a little shy there on the figure. Doesn't quite get to where it ought to be. So that's those are some small marks against it. The armoring, I would say the back spikes on the armor should actually be black to match the armor, basically, or dark green possibly. And just the side spikes should be painted this kind of gray. The ones on this part of the body, these ones I think should be probably be black, but it's a little bit ambiguous. And then I would say the underbody, the fleshier part here under the armor, should maybe be a bit darker. But that's also a little bit hard to tell. It looks like there's some striping on the spikes too. That would have been really neat to see. But I understand that not being here on account of it being maybe a little bit more difficult to replicate. Can't get a good sense of the head geometry in terms of the flatness, but we can definitely see that the lower horn here curves downward, while the other horn on the top kind of splays outward, which is a distinctive feature of the JP3 Anky versus like a more Jurassic World style, where the horn doesn't curve downward as much on the lower end of the head. So they got that correct, which is nice, actually. That's a distinction you can see in Jurassic World Evolution with the JP3 Anky versus the base game regular Anky. I say base game because the JP3 Anky was a DLC in the first game. Other reference material we got here. We got another shot of the head. This gets us more of a frontal view. If I twist the Anky's head here a little bit to try and like replicate that twist that it's doing in that shot, kind of looking to the side, I would say that the head feels a little flat. Not too bad, but a little flat. Also, maybe a little small. Yeah, I think the head's actually maybe a little small here overall. Because the head here compared to the thickness of the body feels like it should be a little larger. Just a smidge. But it's not the worst. I mean, it's probably about the same proportion as the other figure. Oh, also the head is actually a ball joint. I lied. It's just a bit stiff, but this is actually a ball joint here and a separate ball joint here. So you can actually move this side to side independently a little bit. Mine is just not very cooperative. Not terribly surprising that tends to be a recurring issue. We also have this shot here of the Ankies you see in the riverboat scene. And this is where we can see the biggest problem with this figure in terms of accuracy, the tail club. So the tail club here has this kind of four-leaf clover or heart sort of pattern on the figure, if you want to call it that. And you can see pretty well here that the one in the film has kind of a flatter, more circular tail club. This is a difference you can see in Jurassic World Evolution with the JP3 skin versus the other skin. Let's see if I can find a better picture of that real quick. Maybe a comparison image somebody's made. Well, you could see it in that material there. There's more of a circular bit with like a little nub on the end, kind of, not this cloverleaf pattern. In terms of other things we can see here, again, it looks like the spikes on the body are the same color as the armor. This black, you can see the red on the face is probably a bit more widespread than the figure. I would say that this should be a little more rounder on the top. I think this figure is a little flat. I don't know. The one on the right on this image looks a little more rounder than the one that's down near the riverside, but it's also orientation of the dinos a little bit. I would say the spikes on the body should jut out straighter. These spikes here, you can see how they're slanted downward. I think they should be more straight. I think that's the difference between the Jurassic World and JP3 Yankees, actually. Where the Jurassic World ones definitely have this downward slant on the armor, but the JP3 ones seem to poke out. It's like kind of straight to the side. I would say here, maybe in this open lighting, the color of the base body of this figure is more accurate to what's going on here. The underbelly of these Yankees looks fairly light compared to the top. I think I'm okay with the color palette, armor versus the body on the figure. I think it's close enough to be good. Talking about that tail club, here's the Yankee from Dominion. You can see that kind of cloverleaf tail club, and a similar shot of the club from the Indominus Rex fight scene in Jurassic World, where you can see you got the two lobes at the top and then kind of the bit down here. Maybe a little less defined actually in the film in this action shot than in the toy, but I think that's mostly down to it being an action shot. I tried to find more reference material for the Yankees Tail Club, but most people aren't as pedantic about this stuff. So yeah, I couldn't find too much. I'm going to try and find a better example of the JP3 Tail Club here, though. Rayquaza1 on Reddit 3 years ago has done my job for me and found the exact comparison image I was going to try and get. This is in Jurassic World Evolution, possibly 3 years ago. It's probably the first game. And you can see the Jurassic World style Yankee on the top with the kind of cloverleaf, and the JP3 style on the bottom with the more rounded club with the little nipple on the tip, if you want to call it that. And so yeah, definitely the wrong tail on this guy. Which is really strange because the head is correct. So I don't know why the head would be correct, but not the tail. That's like with the Gallimimus was one we talked about where it was clearly styled after a Jurassic World Gallimimus and not a Jurassic Park, despite being labeled a Jurassic Park Gallimimus. The paint job was wrong on that galley. It had teeth. There was nothing about it that was Jurassic Park beyond the fact that Gallimimus was in Jurassic Park. That's not the case here. The paint job is okay. It could be a little bit better, but it's not that bad. And the head is correct. It's just the tail club that's just wrong, which is weird. It's like they kit bashed together two versions of the Yankee into one. Like they started modeling a Jurassic World Yankee with the tail, and then they decided to do JP3, and they did the head, and then they're just like, fuck it, good enough. Kind of weird. We also talked about the spikes. I think you can basically see here on this Yankee how the spikes are kind of smaller and they slope down off the side of the body, which is not true for the JP3, where they're pretty big proportionally and come off sideways. I think that's pretty clearly the case. So really, as far as JP3 goes, it's a Jurassic World Yankee body and tail with a JP3 Yankee head and paint job. Very weird chimera. Still, though, it's a pretty good figure. And given that we've never seen the JP3 Yankees again, I could kind of almost imagine this as a cross between the two. Like, they both exist in universe. They haven't, at least officially, been retconned away, like some changes have been. So it could be a situation like the Dominion Paras where there's, maybe a crossbreed. They can headcanon this as a Jurassic World era JP3 Masrani Yankee crossbreed or something. Maybe that's an explanation that makes sense. So I think we come to the tier ranking part of the review process. It is a nice figure. I'm going to say that. The accuracy does have the issues I described. I think I can feel where it's calling out to me here in the rankings. I think we're looking at an S tier. I think it goes after the Pachycephalosaurus, which is a little disappointing to me. This was the one I was more hyped about. But I think the weird Chimera thing with the Jurassic World style Yankee with a JP3 head and then JP3 paint job is a little strange. I would like it if it had a body plan that was more accurate to JP3, not just the paint job. And there's like a lot of little things with the paint job that could be improved, but that's true of all of these figures. So the paint job, I think, is about all we could really expect. But it's not terribly accurate. Like, I think the threshold here, to me, I think the Amber Dilo, the Baryonyx, the Rex, the Cerato, the Pteranodon, and the Pachycephalosaurus, that group there is like the accurate paint job section, essentially. And I think the Anky and the Dilo here that I put in S, that's where the paint job is noticeably inaccurate, and there's slash sculpting issues. And then you get down to A tier, you've got the Gallimimus that's just the wrong galley. You've got the Triceratops, which has just some issues and is undersized, which is problematic. Like, yeah, I think that makes sense for the ranking. I think it is where it should be. I do see that we're getting a lot of S tier figures. I'm almost wondering if I should reevaluate and flatten this curve out a bit. We're getting a little bit too heavy. Maybe we do need to do that. Because, like, if S tier is perfect, I don't think the Anky is perfect. Yeah, I think we'll do that. I think we're going to restructure this right now. We're going to flatten this out. It's a little too top heavy. I think this is our revised tier list. I think what I just said about I think the paint job is sufficiently accurate. I think that is the threshold for S tier. I think once you have issues with the design slash paint job, the figure cannot be considered S tier, which is why the Anky takes now the top of A. Same with the Dilo, which has paint job issues. So that falls down there under that. And then the Concavinator, I think, is the dividing line at the end of the new A tier. I think the Raptors have enough issues with body proportions in general that we're going to put those at B. And then, yeah, basically I've consolidated C and D tier into D tier, moving the Amber Collection Juvenile Rex just down to the very bottom of the list. It's not good. And then, yeah, the Para and Tiger Stripe Raptor still live here together, just now in C tier. And I think that tracks. I think that flattens it out. It's still a bit top heavy. We'll probably have to reevaluate this further later on. But I really don't feel good putting like the Para, for instance, in D tier. I don't think I can in good conscience ever do that. Maybe we'll have to do another split where, like, I don't know, maybe the Tiger Raptor moves down to D, Para's at the end of C, and then we split up, push down some B tier. I don't know. This still feels accurate to me. Like, none of the ordering changed, just the definition of where the tiers start and stop. And even then, it's not a substantial shift. I think this is correct. All right. Until next time, I think we'll do the female raptor next.